Hi, I'm Doug, your tech support representative here at Atlantic British, and in this video we're going to talk about alternators. Now, something that I've seen come up on a pretty regular basis lately on some of the sports and the LR3s is a failure of the alternator, or actually a failure of the diode in the alternator. And some of the most common symptoms of what I'm getting on the phone calls is an intermittent lighting of the battery warning light on the dashboard, and a sudden increase in the noise from the cooling fan. And essentially what happens is when the diode goes, it induces an AC current into the system that the body control module basically interprets as energize the front fan, and so it will sound louder than you're normally hearing. So those are two of the symptoms, and it's starting to show up on a pretty regular basis. A lot of these vehicles are getting older, they're hitting the high miles. These alternators have seen 130, 150, some of them 190,000 miles, and it's starting to affect them. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to install an alternator on this from underneath. I know in the service manual the installation is a little more involved, but we have some tricks to show you that will help you speed that up, and there's something else to look for while you're working in that general area. So let's get started. All right, so right off the bat, the first thing we want to do is we're going to disconnect the negative lead off the battery. Before I do that, before you even get started, I did want to show you a tool that you're going to need to be able to release the belt tension that we're going to take off to be able to access the alternator. And this is similar. There are other models out there, but it's similar in design. Basically, it's just simply a long, thin, extended bar with a 12-point cutout on the end of it. They'll come with different sockets for the different sizes. You'll need a 15 millimeter on this. This particular application is going to basically apply to both the Sport and the LR3. Same design, it's the 4.4 engine. And then on some vehicles, and we'll find we may need to do it on this, there's essentially a plate that adapts to different angles on this, and then it's held in place by a bolt, and that will give you an access angle to be able to get up to the tensioner to slip the belt off. We're not going to take the belt off completely. All we need to do is get it off the alternator. Alright, so we're going to start with disconnecting the negative lead off the battery. You got two tabs in the front that hold this cover down. Pop them out of the way. Simply pull that out. Negative lead is going to be the one closest to the back of the vehicle. It's a 13 millimeter. You can do it with a pair of pliers if you want. You just need to loosen that a turn or two. Just keep wiggling, and we'll tuck that in behind the battery so it doesn't have a chance of sliding over, making contact while we're working on this. So now we're going to get this up in the air, and then we have the steel splash pan and then two side plastic trims we're going to take out. That'll open up the area so we can get to the alternator. Next step is going to be to take the steel splash pan down, and we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, we got 10 bolts that hold this pan in place. Probably the easiest way I find is I take out the 9, I leave this one here, and then I'm able to stand underneath, hold the pan, zip this bolt out, and lower the pan in place. And be ready, it's a relatively heavy pan. And then on the side, we've got a big piece of curved plastic trim. That's just got 4 plastic pop rivets. You're going to take those out and then drop this panel, and we're going to have an open view of the alternator. And if you want to get a little bit more room to get your arm in there, there's 2 bolts right here, 10 millimeter heads. Zip those out, this front plate will come out, and that'll actually give you a little more visibility and access up to the belt tensioner so we can slip that belt off. Alright, so what I'm pointing at right here is the tensioner assembly for the alternator belt, which is the primary belt. It's going to be behind the belt. Now, the tensioner in here is moved with there's a cutout up top here that fits a 3/8 drive, square drive ratchet extension. This is what we're going to attach that long bar I showed you earlier to take tension off the belt so we can slip it off the alternator pulley. Again, we don't need to remove the belt, we just got to get it off the alternator, and we'll leave it to the side, and then after we have the alternator installed, we can slip the belt back on same way. This basically saves you a lot of R&R that's mentioned in the service manual. So now with the belt off, and we've got the alternator sitting up here, we've got 2 bolts on the bottom. you have your cover right here that you're going to peel back, and you can remove the nut with an open end wrench. This is your positive cable down from the battery. This is the reason why we disconnect the battery up top, is so that this isn't powered, because it's going to touch things as we move it, and we don't need any big sparks. And then up top, almost straight up and in a little bit from the alternator, there is another bolt sticking out. In other words, it faces forward, that you can get at with a 3/8 ratchet and about a 3 or 4 inch extension, and we'll take that out. So take those 3 bolts out, that'll drop the alternator, and then we work on sneaking it out of this opening right here. Alright, so we've got the 3 bolts out of the alternator. They do come right out. The alternator drops down. You can pull it towards you and lift up on the front, and towards the back right here we've got a 3-wire connector. This is your field wire and your grounds and your sensor, and we got to squeeze that tab right there to release it from the back of the alternator. Then that will give us enough slack where we can slide it forward even more and get to the nut that holds the main cable on. Alright, so first trick is when you go to disconnect that little 3-way connector in the back, you're going to squeeze that, and you'll actually hear a click, which means it's released, and then you can get your fingers around both sides of it and wiggle it out. Now we've pulled the alternator forward and spun it around, and there's the nut right there for the main cable. So we're just going to run that off with a ratcheting box wrench or a box wrench, whichever you have. It's 13mm, and then from that point the alternator is completely disconnected from the vehicle, and we can slide it out through this hole. Alright, just a quick note, we got the alternator back up in there, and it's just a little juggling and it gets up in there. Now what we're doing is essentially just reversing our process, and while you're putting the main cable back on, you'll notice that it has 2 long tabs that come 90 degrees off the flat, and they have to line up with slots that are in the alternator. That's this big plastic bushing right here, so make sure they are lined up with that and partially in before you put the nut, go to tighten the nut down, otherwise you can cause some damage there. Again, make sure those are lined up. Alright, so now we're just going to tighten that down. We're going to push it in a little bit. We're going to connect that 3-way connector and bolt it back up in place. Alright, so I'm basically showing you we're halfway through the process. We've got the main cable bolted on. We've plugged the 3-way connector into the back. Make sure you push it in deep enough where you hear a distinct click, and then you know it's locked in place. So you get the alternator back up in. It takes a little wiggling, it takes a little force, but it does go in, not all that bad. We'll get the bottom bolts lined up first, and you can see they're half hanging out. They're only on right now by about 2 or 3 threads. Now we're not going to tighten them up yet. What we're going to do is use those to help us align the top bolt. Once we sneak that in and get that in a couple threads, then we just tighten them down and the alternator's in. And then we'll show you how to get the belt back on. Okay, so essentially through the whole process, I left the bar on the tensioner for that belt, and you look straight up, you can see the belt's basically still in position. Just do a double check to make sure that it's on all the pulleys that it needs to be on. Take a tension out of the belt. This is a tight one, but it slides right back over. Before you take the tool out, just run your fingers up in there. Make sure that the belt is seated on all the pulleys that it needs to be on. As you can see, you've got one up there. You've got the idler in the back, and on the power steering pump, and on the AC compressor, and that all looks pretty good. So we relieve the tension. We'll pop all this out. Make sure you get your tool out of that tensioner. Most times, like you say here, I pop it out, sure enough it leaves a little extension in there. Always check that, make sure you don't leave any tools under the hood. So essentially at this point the alternator is in, and all we're going to do now is just put back the side cover that has the 4 plastic rivets, the front panel here, and the splash pan. And what I probably suggest you do at this point, before you go putting all that back on, drop it down and start it up, make sure that everything is working right, and then also make sure that put a voltmeter across the battery, make sure that that unit is charging. But you should be good at this point. And this should take care of both that intermittent battery light and the noisy front fan. So when you're ready to install the alternator on your Sport or LR3, and I will say that the LR3 and Sport without the supercharger is a little bit easier because there isn't so much plumbing in your way. Just give a call to any of our knowledgeable salesmen at 1-800-533-2210. And thanks for watching.